Hey everybody, we have a special treat for you today. I'm Steve Adderholt, the race director of Cocodona, and we have Michael Versteeg with us here. We're having breakfast coffee in the studio, and we thought we'd have a little chat. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Great.
Thanks for having me
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
in our favorite place in the world,
Yeah. Oh, and Phoenix. Yes,
Phoenix.
we love Phoenix. We were just having a conversation about how of all the places in the world, Phoenix is probably our number one.
I love Phoenix.
I love Phoenix. All right. Well, let's first talk about your first year experience at Cocodona. So you came out and set the course record that will always remain on the hardest year.
Yeah.
How was that for you? What are your standouts from that experience?
It was great. I mean, it felt like a great privilege to be, part of that and be able to get to run that first year. And yeah, it was the hard year. I don't know I don't, all these like course records. I mean, it's like Cocodona has 3 years now and there's three course records,
Yeah,
and it's like,
right. Well, hopefully that'll be it.
yeah, no, I mean, I feel like, yeah, that first year is super special. I think anyone who participated in that first year. I mean, even now when I run into other like Cocodona runners from that first year, there's always like a acknowledgement, and a little fist bump or whatever. And it's like, because that first year was fucking wild, man. It was pretty crazy, and but that's why we do inaugural events. And it's like a special thing, and it'll never happen again. And it's like, I mean, the race will get bigger, the race will get better. All things get better with time and practice. But I love the chaos of first year.
Awesome.
It's like,
Yeah, there. I mean,
you probably don't.
I don't like it all that much,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there's always things that you're gonna find out the first year that you didn't know about or didn't consider.
In a 250-mile race.
Yeah,
This isn't
there's
like
gonna
your
be a few of those. Yeah,
rock and roll half marathon. There's a little more variables.
there are. Yeah, there's a few that we're juggling. Yeah, well, and a couple of them happened in the Bradshaws that first year. I mean,
Yeah.
the after Crown King, that section going on Yankee Doodle Trail and a Roster Creek Trail,
Mm-hmm.
they were no longer on because the feedback that first year was, man, it's too brutal.
Yeah.
And so now those sections are road, but also that first 33 miles. Now we have two water stations and 4 liter required carry. Yours, there was no the first year, no water stations,
Yeah.
and a 3 liter required
Mm-hmm.
carry.
Well, that first year too, there was no water.
Yeah.
So the second, which was the third year, the second year we did that course, or that area at least, with the water station and water requirements. There was water everywhere,
Yeah.
like on the course. Like, and so it's like it just depends on the year and if there's like water out there or not. And it's like that. So I guess that was last year. You could have done that water. You could have done that section without carrying any water if you had a filter. Us, yeah. No, I'm just saying it's like,
Yeah, I know.
it's so I'm not recommending that, or I'm not saying that there shouldn't be these requirements or whatever, because there can literally be no water out there.
Yeah.
Um, but it's so, I mean, it's the desert. That's how it is everywhere in the desert. If you go running, depends on when you go.
Yeah.
If there's water or not.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
How much water did you carry that first year? Do you remember? Yeah,
I don't think I'm allowed to say that because it's another reason why I'm going to get disqualified every year.
Okay. Yeah, let's not talk about that.
No, I mean the first year.
Yeah.
Oh, there were no requirements.
Yeah, there was a 3 liter heavily recommended, not
Heavily recommended, not required.
Yeah.
Yeah. I carried 2 liters of water.
Yeah.
And I usually don't carry water. So I was wearing a vest and a bladder, which the Cocodona is the one day of the year I wear a vest. And it's like, especially with a bladder in it. So it was like, because I had carried that much water, that whole time I was like super conservative with my water. And then finally I like get up and I like see the aid station and I like still have all this water. So I was actually like chugging water
You were the only one,
because
dude.
like Yeah, but I also think that was my like race plan. Like I knew that that section was going to be like crazy, and it's why I was so far out in front in the beginning, because my race plan that first year and last year was like get out of this section as quickly as possible.
Huh.
Like get up into the Bradshaws before the sun comes up, before it gets hot.
Right.
Like don't run. This first 30 miles like you're not running Cocodona pace.
Yeah, totally.
Like you're running too you're right like you're purposely going out too fast. And that's the only race I would ever say like use that as a strategy, but it does make sense. Like you want to get up out of the mountains as quickly as possible before the sun comes up. Like get as many miles under your feet.
Interesting.
And because of that, I think I had an easier time than a
Yeah.
lot of runners. Like a lot of runners were like taking it super easy. Like this is mile 20 of 250. Like we're hiking, we're like going slow, and you're also roasting
Yep.
with no water. And
It's
so it's like it.
true. You
Um,
kind of worry me, dude. You're like putting out. If you are like Versteeg, this might be a good race plan.
well, no, I mean
Most people
I'm
aren't
not
like
saying
Versteeg.
like I think the only recommendation there would be to like I don't know. It's different now because there's the water station. And there's like it's you're requiring runners to carry so much water, which is great. So it's just different. I mean, maybe runners can do that section like a little bit at a slower pace, but I mean, it's not an unusual thing. I mean, even in like alpinism and outdoor sports, like speed is safety
Yeah.
in a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like lingering in these sections that are hard and exposed and brutal and dangerous
Huh.
are is speed is your friend.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying like I wasn't running like 6 minute miles. It's like you're doing 12-minute miles. That's like going fast, and Cocodona is doing 12-minute miles.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you are trying to get through that section as quickly and
Huh.
efficiently as possible rather than lingering all day because it's exposed too. So if you're lingering in that section all day, like you're getting sunburn, you're getting sun exposure versus being up in the trees. I actually think the hardest part of that first day is not that section. I think the hardest part of that first day is from Crown King forward
Up and over
on that
towers, and then
on that road.
and the road.
That
Really?
road is so exposed and it's so hot
Ah, well, yeah. You're
during that
there. You're
day.
there so quickly that it's on a hot part of the day. Most
Yeah,
everybody else is experiencing that hot part in a different section, but
that's true.
but
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. The next 40 miles after Crown King are also hard, very hard.
Yeah, I mean easier now, and that's like I feel like ultra runners, like, and myself included. I'm not excluding myself from this. Like we actually, so a big thing of that like first year Cocodona and that like first 50K and it wasn't just the first 50K. I feel like it was more like the first 100K. Like the first 100K is like pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Um, like we sort of lean the first year. Cocodona people like sort of lean into that as an excuse for the rest of their experience, and I do this too. Is like, well, a lot of us runners were like, for the next 3 days, we're like just trying to recover from that first day, and now that you guys have made it easier, like we can't use that as an excuse anymore.
It's still really
So
hard.
it's
But
still really
but
hard.
yeah, I
Yeah,
get it. I get
yeah.
it.
But
Well, okay, I want to ask you
yeah.
about something else.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that first year, this was, I mean, one of my favorite things that came out of the first year. But after the race, you did an interview, or I don't know if it was a podcast or a story or what. But I started getting emails that Michael Versteeg, in this report, said that he was microdosing mushrooms during the race, as part of your either strategy or enjoyment. I didn't read the article actually, but I'm getting all these emails asking, will you strip him of the win?
Yeah.
And Jamila and I talked about it. We looked it up, and hey, psilocybin's not a performance-enhancing drug. In fact, I don't know if most people would like jump on the bandwagon to do it before a big race like this. But yeah, talk us through that experience, and is that normal for you?
Yeah, I think so. The first year Cocodona, that was like in a phase in my life that I was microdosing mushrooms for like mental health stuff, and a lot of people when they hear, I mean, like I feel like just in the last like few years, the idea of using like mushrooms for mental health is like 3 or 4 years ago, that was like a controversial thing to like now everyone's heard of that. It's like, it's not that big of a deal, right? Like, I feel like a lot more people know about that. And it's like, so microdosing mushrooms, like you take such a small amount. I mean, it's probably on par with like drinking a beer, or maybe even less. Like you don't feel anything. It's just a mental health thing.
Yeah.
Um, Now, the day of Cocodona, it wasn't like a macro dose, but it was a more than a micro dose, like for sure. Like I was aware that I was on mushrooms for those like first 4, 5, 6 hours. So like that like first section, and I feel like, Wit, I met him during that run, and I feel like he probably got the wrong impression of like who I am as a person, but a positive one, because I was like super chatty and just like super friendly and
I love it.
And yeah, and by that's one thing I experienced. So like the other time that I've done mushrooms during a race was at Man Against Horse, I think potentially even the same year. And I did a lot of mushrooms for the whole race. And what I sort of learned from that experience was that you sort of reach a certain point of like mental fatigue. Like you can't do mushrooms for very long. It's like your brain being that active and like that on fire the entire time. Like you sort of like, it sort of becomes exhausting.
Okay.
And so like I never re-upped at Cocodona. I never like did, like a lot of people ask me is like, well, what was I like continuously taking mushrooms for like the 72 hours that I was like out running? And it's like, no, it's like after that first day, like I didn't really take anymore. But yeah, that was more just an experience. I'm really big on experiencing things, and I look at races like pretty differently, I think, than a lot of people do, and if there's not an experience to be had, then I'm not like super interested in doing that race. And that was just a way of me like sort of experiencing that day. And it was, I think I take things probably less seriously than a lot of other ultra runners do, and I don't necessarily care about outcomes or results or like things like. I mean, I care a little. I'm not trying to sound like that guy, but I like it's like Jamil said. I do like to do well, and I care, but it's a little bit different. And like I actually would have loved if you guys stripped me of my title. Like that would have been awesome for doing mushrooms, because like again, I don't like, what does that mean? Like my name's not on ultra sign up or whatever. Like I don't fucking care about ultra sign up, so it's like it doesn't actually mean anything. It's just like it's just appeasing a bunch of people who don't understand our sport and don't understand the motives of like why we do it. It's a bunch of people like I remember, besides like the mushroom thing, like my shoes were like a big story that first year, right? Like everyone was like, Versteeg's fucking shoes, and every single time a live reporter or like one of your live streamers would catch up to me, they'd be like, ask me about my shoes. And it got to the point where I was like, don't talk to me about my fucking shoes. And it's like how many like people sitting on their ass at home were commenting about how like I'm making the wrong shoe choice. It's
Well,
like, how can you say that about the guy like winning Cocodona? Like I'm clearly not making the wrong shoe choice. It's just
yeah.
like
I think shoe choices, whatever works for you,
yeah, no, I
is
agree.
what it should be. And
Yeah.
I think also experience a race. The way you race and experiencing a race is very much the same. Whatever you're there to find out or experience. But personally, I completely agree. We do this to be outside in a beautiful area.
Yeah, I
And
think there was
to
just a
be
lot of stuff
experiencing it.
that first year, because it was like the live stream. It just received, and like I love the idea of you and Jamil sitting around getting emails from people complaining about me doing mushrooms, about me stopping and like drinking a beer with people like out on the trail.
Yeah.
Just like all these things is like, I understand that there are rules, and I understand that there have to be rules. Um, at events, except for like saddles. Saddles, I don't think there are any rules. But like I understand why all of that has to exist.
Yeah.
But you start getting like too too rigid with how people are behaving. Like we're out there running 250 miles. Like this again, this is not a 5K. This is like there has to be some I'm convinced that if you actually followed every runner around for 250 miles, you could probably find a reason to disqualify every single one of those runners.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because the reality of it, like if my pacer like hands me some fruit snacks, like, is that allowed? Like technically not.
Technically, no.
And it's like, but the reality is like shit like that happens over the course of 3 days. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's not that big of a deal. I don't know. Like people are going to be like focused in on me.
No, I just love this interview so much. But dude, it's like, it's just, you are exactly who you are. Which is the beautiful part is you wouldn't care about getting disqualified because it's about the experience.
Right. So like I'm going to go out and run Cocodona 250. I'm going to finish Cocodona, whether I'm first or whether I'm 40th. And it's like, it doesn't actually matter. Like, what does it mean? Especially in today with like the way people perceive accomplishment. You know what I mean? Like accomplishment is almost just like this distilled down thing of like Instagram posts. So it's like it doesn't mean anything for you guys to disqualify me.
Right.
Right. Like it like literally nothing.
Well, that's
other than providing me a platform to talk shit on those people.
Oh God, I love that you are Michael Versteeg.
And like provide me a platform to encourage people to like microdose for mental health. Like that's all that would have done is like would have provided like another platform for me to like talk shit, which clearly I'm good at. But it's like,
oh my gosh,
like
awesome.
like I still know that like I did what I did, and it
right.
Like even the superficial side of things of like wanting to say that I'm like the champion of like, you know, it's like I can still do that if I want to. Like it doesn't actually matter.
Right.
It's just I don't get my like my like points on international trail running or whatever. My ranking is affected.
You do it for you, which is the most important thing. Well, okay, let's talk about something else you're doing.
Okay.
Now, which I mean, the past few years have been pretty big changes for you in your outside of work life.
Yeah.
And also your professional life.
Yeah.
So launching saddles.
Yeah.
And having a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Remodeling a house, remodeling your mom's house, like doing all. You're always pretty busy, but yeah. So tell us about the last few years.
Yeah, the last few years have been. I think as much as I can be domesticated, has happened, and I think there's a lot of like perceptions about me, and again, it's probably because of the social media thing. Like I don't really share things about my personal life publicly, so it's like no one. The only way people know of me is because of running, because of things like Cocodona and things like that. Like no one knows about my personal life. So like, yes, I had a baby. It's like it's the best thing I've ever done in my life, like without question. And so that's been my whole life, and it's been awesome. And yeah, nothing else really matters or is important. It definitely like sort of like it's a good like psychological thing to happen to you to like actually care about something. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of there's a lot of people like me. I feel like you spend your whole life sort of like pretty nihilistic and apathetic towards a lot of things, and to all of a sudden like care about something so much and constantly, like to like feel emotion constantly all day long is like fucking exhausting. And it's like, but it's awesome. That very much is my life now. And I love it, and it's great. But like, I wear a seatbelt now. If that can tell you like how I feel about being alive now.
Big changes. Yeah. I was just with Tony. We were talking about Tony Ross, and he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and I'm like looking at him like, man, you're an interesting dude.
Yeah. Well, I was actually like, so Mars, my baby's name is Margot. We call her Mars. And Mars was like 3 months old, and I was out at Granite Mountain doing this like, we have some like local FKT stuff that a lot of us guys don't like really advertise or anything. And it's like out on Granite Mountain, there's a lot of like, so there's a lot of climbing out there, and there's a lot of like free soloing. So like you run out to Granite Mountain and you free solo a route, and then you like come back, and it's all like fairly mild. I mean, you can make it crazy if you want to, but it's like, you know, like 5.5, 5.6 type stuff. And it's like I was up like 200 feet on this like 5.6 route, and like, you know, maybe I don't do this anymore, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah,
Gives you new perspective.
yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, it's predictable. It's like, it's all all the stereotypes people say about having a kid. It's just, they're just true, you know?
Yeah,
And
but I
it's
think
like,
what you probably, I don't know, I'm assuming, but what you probably learned is that it's not as much of a conscious choice as it is like you know, a gut, a whole being, a spirit choice of this is what I want out of life, not a like I'm going to do this out of responsibility.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember before having a kid, I would say things like, like I've had conversations with other friends who like don't have kids, and uh, what I said is that the reason why I want to have a kid is because, for better or for worse, like could be the worst decision I ever make in my life, but for better or for worse, I feel like having a kid is like a pretty essential part of what it is to be a human being, and to bring this word to experience life. Like it's a pretty integral part of experiencing the nature of humanity is to have a kid. And for better or for worse, again, could be the worst thing I ever do, I want to experience that, and I want to do that. And you know, it's not the worst thing I've ever done, it's the best thing I've ever done. But it's like, but that was sort of my motivation to having a kid in the first place was
Yeah.
like, was doing that. So
Yeah, I love that you bring it back to, I mean, you were talking about the human experience, but you know, really, we're here for such a short time, and experience is what it's all about, not your ITRA points or your ultra sign up score. So I love
and
it.
I think Cocodona is a great race to like sort of represent that ideal a little bit, because yeah, it just, it's just perfect. You know, it's a lot like you're 100% more likely to have a memorable experience, or like whatever adjective experience here at Cocodona versus, you know, a lot of these other races. So
I think, yeah, just the time that you're out there with pacers and other runners and crew, and you know, it's a big part of that. Tell us about saddles.
yeah, Saddles is so Saddles is my race. We did the first year last year. We're gonna do it again this year. Yeah, it's great. It's Prescott. It's my hometown. It's where I live. It's where I've lived for. I grew up in Prescott. And, so yeah, to put on what I sort of envisioned becoming a like pretty classic 100 miler, like around the town of Prescott. And it was super successful last year. We're gonna do it again, and yeah.
Washing machine style.
Yeah, so we're gonna because it's a loop, right? It's like 2 miles out of town, 96-mile loop, 2 miles back, and so we're gonna do it the other way this year, just because why not? And yeah, it changes things up. For the 50-mile runners, you get to run the other half of the course. For the 100-mile runners, you get to see the other half during the day versus the night. So
Yeah,
yeah, and we'll just keep doing that, I think, year after year, and
I love it.
yeah, it's a super cool run. I mean, it's very, you know, obviously I'm like a fairly idealistic person, and so I sort of impose my ideals on things, and Saddles is sort of the will be, and will sort of, as best as I can maintain it and control it, will sort of be like the antithesis of a lot of these like bigger, like higher market, super competitive 100 milers. So
Authentic to the experience that you want to create.
yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, there's, you know, there, like you and I have a long history, and like, you know, with sort of the races that we've been a part of, and the races that we want to spend our energy on, and the people that we want to be around, you know, and like, you know, even, you know, with like Matt and the races that like he was putting on, and like Matt and Jamil were both sort of like my first introduction to like working races and like being around races, and I think we've seen a lot, and and also just like being a runner and having like traveled and run a lot of these bigger races, like I've seen a lot of these different races, and it's like we sort of know what we like, and we sort of have this vision about what our events could be and should be, and or should not be. And I actually think Jamil is like a really interesting person in the sense that, like, besides sort of the obvious things about him, but I think he's a really interesting person in the sense that, like, he still is able to see those things, and is still like it's just crazy the amount of things he has going on in his head, but he's like able to, like last year, like Aravaipa was a huge support of Saddles, and this year I don't know, but to what extent Aravaipa is going to be involved with Saddles this year, but they will be involved, and it's like, like no one knows that about last year, that Aravaipa was like a shadow support of my race, and it's like through no gain of their own, they didn't advertise it, they didn't like market it. It's like they just decided to help what could be contrived as like a competition. They
Right.
like which clearly isn't, but you know what I mean. But it's like they just wanted to help and see a race succeed, and so like I feel like that's why Jamil is such a interesting, and Aravaipa in general is such a cool company, and why I've always been like supportive of them and like being involved with them, because it's yeah, today, with everything going on with like UTMB, like controversies and all of that, it's like it's good to be able to like see the good in like instead of me just like talking shit and not offering solutions, it's like here's one example where I can talk shit and offer a solution. It's like run Jamil's races.
Sweet.
It's
Yeah,
like,
that's great.
yeah.
Well, another piece to Saddles, you were talking about, remaining authentic, putting on the race that you want to put on.
Mm-hmm.
So Satisfy is a partner for your race,
Yeah.
and it seems like their idea of what ultra running is, their idea of what the race experience matches yours. So it seems like it's authentic, and honestly, seems like they're kind of in love with you.
Yeah, no,
the
I mean,
persona.
I think the feeling is mutual. Like they, so the biggest thing, and we've actually talked about this, like we've verbalized this with each other, um, is that the biggest thing about Satisfy that I love the most about those people in that company is like it's not their image, it's not their marketing, it's not their brand, it's not their clothes. It's like I admire them as like human beings, and I think that they're really nice, like loving and awesome people. And that's all we care about. And it's like, and they've actually said the same thing to me, is like they get hit up all the time by like runners who are actually good runners, because I don't actually consider myself that good of a runner. Like 3 days out in the desert, like sure, but like I'm not, I'm just not, that's fine. But like they get hit up by like a lot of like guys that are like way faster than I am, and it's like but they're not like very nice, you know. And it's like, so like Satisfy doesn't want to like work with them because
Yeah.
and so it's like that's what I love most about them, is like they're just who they are as people, and that's what attracted to me them is in the first place. And just and I think that the feeling is mutual, and it's just a really great relationship and collaboration. And at the end of the day, that's all it really is a collaboration. And it's like and they were such a huge, I mean, similar to Aravaipa, but they were such a huge support of Saddles that first year. Like, I don't think the event, definitely financially, the race would not have been a success without them, because they took over a lot of the marketing and then the production of, all the paraphernalia and all the things that go into a race, and T-shirts and merchandise and blah, like they like took over all that. And so yeah, it's just a really good fit. I'm obviously like kind of a polarizing figure, and so like I can't really be sponsored by anyone else, like I just don't really feel like it would work with anybody else, because yeah, it just wouldn't. Right? It's like
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not part of like, you'll like I would never like think about like seeing me on like Solomon's, like it just like I don't know, it just doesn't make, it's like.
Well, yeah, I think it is the perfect fit, and that's what's cool seeing it from a little bit behind the curtain, is that it is such a good fit. And from a little bit different perspective, I love with any partner that I'm going to work with, I want them to be good people as well. I don't feel good when I don't feel good about who the people that I'm working with.
Yeah.
Are.
Well, I mean, I experienced this at Saddles where it's like sponsorships is like to me they're not worth it at all when it comes to a race personally. Like the amount that companies are like usually willing to give is like not worth having like another interested party that you feel responsible for like giving them a return or whatever on their investment. And it's just like not worth it at all. But I think what Satisfy is really good at, like one of the things that they're really good at is like they will try to the best to their ability to actually like when Brees sees Cocodona, he wants to give to that, and he wants to encourage that and lift that up. He's not identifying a market that he can extract some sort of return from. Like he wants to show up and he wants to make Cocodona better. And if there's a return in like visibility or marketing, then that's great for them. But like I think that they're one of the best at just identifying things and saying this is something that we support and we want to like support this. I mean, I think I'm the best example of that. Like they just want to support me, and they don't care what I do. They don't care what I say in interviews. They don't care what I do on social media. Like it's like they just want to support me, because in Brees's words, like he made Satisfy Running like for me, but before he even knew me. You know what I mean? It's like he made Satisfy Running for runners like me that like don't fit the brand.
Huh.
You know what I mean? Like we don't fit into like whatever has become the quote unquote like ultra runner. And it's like so like yeah, it's just I think they're a great company to have on board, whether you're a race. I mean, actually, the idea of sponsoring an aid station was an idea that Brees and I came up with. I was visiting in Paris, and he was talking about wanting to sponsor Cocodona that first year. And I was like, well, how about this? Like, how about you take over an aid station? And, like, because instead of just being, like, a name on the back of a T-shirt where you, like, gave the company some money or whatever they did to get their name on the T-shirt, like, you actually... like people see how, and that's actually for Saddles and for Cocodona. I think that it's something that you guys could really embrace because of the live streaming. It's like, and so what I sort of envisioned in that initial conversation with Brees was like, if you take over the aid station, like I know that like reality is different than conversation, and it's not always done perfectly. But in a perfect world, like if a company comes in and takes over the aid station, it's like a win-win-win situation.
Totally.
Like the runners get a better aid station. Ideally, the race organization has less responsibility over an aid station. I know that's not how it like always works, but ideally. And the sponsor or whatever company is getting much better visibility, right? Like this is how they're sponsoring it. And I think Cocodona is in a unique situation where because of the live stream, you could actually create like a friendly rivalry between companies. Like if every aid station had their own like sponsor, you could have like the Hoka tent versus the Satisfy tent versus the, like whatever. And like the bells and whistles and the shenanigans could really get like bounce houses and like weird shit. You know what I mean? And maybe you don't want that because of like permitting things.
Probably not bounce
But
houses.
you know what I'm saying? It's like you can actually create this thing where companies feel like they're getting a return and like getting visibility, and you could create like a friendly rivalry, and at the end of the day it's only a better aid station for the runners.
Yeah, that's
and so I think it's like a cool idea of how companies can sponsor races in a more like you're actually supporting it versus like sending me some gels and like expecting me to like hire photographers for you,
Yeah, no, agreed. That's been my experience with Brees and Satisfy as well. They from day one they just wanted to increase the experience. So, yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm really happy to have that same partner in Satisfy. Okay, so you're running this year.
Yeah.
Again. What are you excited about for this year? What are you going into it thinking?
Okay, so this year Satisfy will be this year at Cocodona will be my last year running the race. Um, I I love this race. Like it's my favorite race, and I'll always be involved. Like I'll always be there. But this year will be my last year running, and my goal this year is to actually go in like ready to run Cocodona. I've participated all 3 years. Even the first year, like I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't, it's like I did fine, and I finished the race, and um, but that doesn't mean that I was like prepped and ready to go in. I mean, I think like famously in the documentary, Jamil's like, yeah, I texted him like a week before the race or whatever, and it's like, do you want to do this? And I was like, sure, but like, and it's like, so like, and then the last 2 years, so 2 years ago I was injured. My back was screwed up. I knew I wasn't going to finish. That was very much a participation trophy. I got to downtown Prescott and I stopped, and that was like enough for me. Again, just participation trophy, just to be involved and run the event. Last year, like similar thing. I mean, everything we talked about, like babies, houses being rebuilt, living in construction zones. I ran and dropped at Black Canyon in February. I didn't run a single day until Cocodona. So it's like the fact that I got as far as I did at Cocodona last year was like that's like I was surprised I got as far as I did. So anyway, I say all of that not to like be excuses of like why I didn't finish Cocodona, just to say my goal this year really is to like be prepared for Cocodona, which I've never done. And that doesn't mean I'm going to like, I don't think anyone should have expectations of me doing super well. I mean, I think I've aged a lot in the last 3 years, both like mentally and physically. And I actually don't think I've ever really recovered physically from my Colorado Trail experience. That was like, I had some issues from that. And that was like 6 months after Cocodona, that first year. And I would just like to at least, like when I look back on my life in like 10, 15 years, and I'm looking back on my like era of ultra running, I would like to feel like I tried hard while I still could try hard. And that's like sort of my goal this year. But the reality is, and I'm going to say something else that people may not like very much. I think training for ultra marathons is like one of the best things that you can do in life. I think it's one of the best things for you. I think it's awesome both for the health of your body, but also for the health of your mind. I think that like considering yourself an ultra runner and like the day-to-day training for that is great. I think the actual day of running ultras is not good for you. I don't think that's physically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like, and so like, I don't think running 250 miles on like an hour of sleep is like that good for you. So I'm getting to a point in my life where it's like, I don't have the motivation to keep putting myself through that. And, without that, like sort of completely stubborn, like obsessive motivation of I'm finishing at all costs, like you're not going to finish Cocodona, because over 250 miles there's so many times where like you probably should stop. Like actually the second year where I dropped at Prescott, like that first night, I was actually I had a lot of friends running that year, and I was able to spend the next few days like driving around and like seeing my friends. I was like, this is way crazier, like watching it than participating in it. Like seeing my friends on like that like fourth morning, like crawl out of bed, just like, you should stop. You know what I mean? But they don't, because they have that like, I'm going to finish. And without that, you're not going to. Yeah. So like, and I've lost that a little bit in my ultra running. Like I've done a lot of, what is the motivation when you've been running ultras for 10, 12 years, and like I have this conversation a lot with Jamil because we're both getting old, and we both like have done a lot of stuff, and like what is the motivation? Like that first time you run 100 miles in your life is like could be one of the most like memorable, life-changing things that ever happens to you. The 30th time like finishing 100 mile, it's like you're not really getting a whole lot, at least me, out of that. And I'm not saying that like you shouldn't aspire to that or like
Yeah.
do that, but like just for me,
Maybe not as much of a like one-time unique experience, but I do like every time you do one of these, you learn something
oh,
about
for
yourself
sure.
or
Yeah,
life or
for sure. No, I agree with that. I just think that it's hard. It's been hard for me to maintain motivation when you hit those like really, really dark points in races because the payoff isn't as much for me anymore.
yeah.
So it's like when I hit those really, really dark places in these races, like it's like, okay, I'm just gonna stop. You know, it's like I don't want to do that anymore.
Well, I mean,
And again, that's just like very personal, and that's just like my thing. And it's like I actually have to find a way to get over that. Like I have to figure out. It's almost like learning how to be an ultra runner again. It's like when I go into Cocodona this year, like I have to be able to have that mentality of like I'm going to finish no matter what.
yeah, you got to find your purpose to finish.
Right. Versus like
Hmm.
versus because I won't if I don't, and I haven't. You know what I mean? And so I think this year is going to be a really great exploration for me to like I like and again I don't think that anyone should have crazy expectations about I mean I do think I would love it if, you know, a local runner won Cocodona every year.
I would too.
And I think that that is possible. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's all I'll say about that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great chatting with you, dude. Thank you so much
Thanks.
for coming in, and we can't wait to see what you do out there on the course, dude.
Yeah, no, like I said, I'm excited to be. I feel really privileged to be a part of it every year, and even if I don't run in future years, like I'll be there and I'll be supporting in whatever way I can. So, because I think there's sometimes we lack the ability to identify when we should say something or when we should be involved in something or when we should encourage things, and being able to identify like what is good in ultra running and what is bad in ultra running. I think especially right now in our sport, like there are things that we should support and there are things that we should be involved in, and I think that like Cocodona is the epitome of that. So
Gosh, not even scripted, dude.
yeah.
Well, thanks. For
And
the
you,
kind
I mean,
words.
you
That's
and
great.
Jamil, I mean, you're two of my favorite people. So, yeah, I mean, I like to surround myself with people that I admire. So that's why I'm sitting here.
Sweet, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. All right. Well, I hope you had as much fun chatting with Michael Versteeg as I did, and we'll see you on the trails. Thanks.